Hey, welcome back, I'm Lei. And recently I found something strange. Just the other day, I was visiting an engineering firm right here in Singapore, and after the visit, their team of engineers, mostly Indians, invited me for lunch. So I went, but as I was talking to them, I realized among 7 of them, none is using an iPhone. So I asked why, and then I realized how unpopular iPhones are among Indians and how unpopular iPhone is in India. I was really eager to find out why. I don't want to make claims that iPhone is not popular in India without backing it up. So here we go. If we look at the statistics, iPhones are popular around the world. Taking a look at iOS market share would give us a good gauge. On average, iOS takes 18.91% of the mobile operating system market share. If we look at iOS market share by region, iOS usage is the highest in North America and Oceania, which amounts to 48%, followed by Europe, in which iOS occupies 24.06% of the smartphone market share. In both Asia and South America, iPhone occupies around 10%, and lastly, in Africa, iPhone takes 7% of the market. Well, you might say India is a developing country and iPhones are expensive, so obviously more people in the developed nations will purchase an iPhone than people in the developing nations. You're probably right. But for that, let's look at BRIC countries: Brazil, Russia, India, and China. In Brazil, iPhone takes 11.57% of the market. In Russia, iOS takes 23.51%. In China, iOS takes 21.96%, and finally in India, iOS occupies only a whopping 2.9%, even lower than the average of Africa. So obviously there's something strange, something deeper going on. It's not just about GDP per capita or economic development. So what is it about? Well, first of all, admittedly, price does play a big role in India, especially with so many cheaper alternatives available from the Android side. iPhone X in the United States cost $999, but it cost over $1,300 in India after import duty and currency conversion. That's a 30% premium, one of the highest in the world. Apple tried to avoid this premium by opening up its own factory in India, but it only managed to do so last year, and it decided to produce low-end SE version of iPhones. Washington Post commented on this move and said, by marketing inferior products, it may also be insulting Indian customers. I have my differences with Washington Post on many matters, but I agree with them on this fully. Secondly, Apple is facing some very unconventional and aggressive competitors. Just in the last 3 years, the Chinese has taken over India by landslide with their localized strategy. Traditionally, Samsung has a strong lead in the Indian smartphone market, but this situation is changing very rapidly. Xiaomi has just taken over Samsung to be the lead smartphone seller in India end 2017. Oppo and Vivo's strategy of opening stores everywhere is also paying off. They're pushing their smartphones very aggressively by providing high profit margins to sellers. And as a result, sellers favor selling Oppo and Vivo phones because they make more per Oppo or Vivo sold. This new business model is disruptive to the status quo of the industry and is proven to be very effective in populous countries like China and India because rural customers like to hold and feel the phone before buying it, yet flagship smartphone stores do not reach the vast majority of villages in China or India. Facing this unconventional competition from the Chinese, Samsung is quick to adapt and started opening stores in rural areas. Apple is not. Therefore, despite Tim Cook being very vocal about his plan to conquer the Indian market, Apple has been failing to do so. Lastly, if it comes to the key factor that prevents Apple from succeeding in India, I think it's Apple itself. Apple has been successful sticking with its golden brand, but to the vast majority of new customers in India, over 50 million Indians will own a smartphone for the first time in 2018, Apple's brand means nothing to them. They like to look at specs, features, and iPhone is hardly superior in that regard. And perhaps most importantly, Apple's strength in other markets has made Apple unable to change and adapt in India. India is a diverse country culturally, religiously, and linguistically, and therefore, it requires agility from Apple's side to accommodate these differences. For example, app stores require credit cards to pay for apps, but according to the same Washington Post article, only 1% of the Indian population have credit cards. Additionally, Apple Music is also considered inferior compared to its local competitors such as Savan and Ghana. What about Siri? It hardly recognizes the Indian accent. Apple's other products like the Mac is just outrageously expensive for the market. My point is, what Apple does well in other countries to lock in its customers doesn't work in India. On the contrary, I'm seeing the opposite happening right now. With 2.9% market rate, Apple will find more and more of its potential customers getting familiar with the Android system and with Samsung, Xiaomi, and Oppo. As a result, Apple will find it even harder to penetrate the Indian market in the future when these customers choose to upgrade their phones under the same Android brand because of the familiarity a few years down the road. The reverse will happen to Apple in India when people get comfortable with Google's ecosystem, with Google Assistant, Google Documents, Play Store, and perhaps Google Home. Apple will find it even harder to be popular in India. Apple has a great brand, a brand that is associated with perfection, user-friendliness, and creativity, but in India, Apple has hit the wall. If it's not willing to bend certain rules, not willing to adjust to the diverse culture and language in India, Apple is in trouble. All right, thank you so much for watching. Obviously, this is a very interesting case for Apple. Apple is almost popular everywhere except India. As you guys know, Apple's stock price has just passed $1 trillion, being the first company that has passed $1 trillion mark. That is why Apple's failure in India will definitely have a very long-lasting effect on Apple in the future as India becomes the fastest growing smartphone market in the world. It is, I think, already the fastest growing smartphone market in the world right now. So let me know in the comment down below, what do you think? Also, as my statistics, YouTube statistics reflect, most of my audiences are from the United States, Britain, Australia, Canada, but I have, I think, 3 to 7% of you guys watching my videos coming from India. So I would really encourage you guys to leave a comment down below and let me know if you agree with my assessment and what are your experiences with iPhones and with iPhone's competitors like Xiaomi, Samsung, Oppo, Vivo, all those phones. Let me know in the comment down below. I would really like to hear your thoughts. Lastly, I want to welcome these few people to my Patreon. They are Michael, Peter, Tom, and Abasu Mente. Sorry if I butchered your name, but thank you so much for supporting me on Patreon, and I think with more of you guys in the future supporting me on Patreon, this channel could be better. All right, thank you so much for watching. As always, I'm Lai. I'll catch you guys later.